Right. So welcome. Today is a Q&A with WMQFA. So you are chatting today with me. I'm Melissa Alstead. I'm the Executive Director of the Wisconsin Museum of Quilts and Fiber Arts. I am joined today by Emily Schlemowitz, who is the museum's exhibit curator, and Devin McElrath, who is the museum's education and collections manager. So we figured we'd give you a little update about kind of what's going on, and then let us know what questions you've got. We want to know what you want to know. And we've got some photos, hopefully that will work. So one of the things, since we just posted it in today's Barn Blast, which is our e-newsletter that goes out on Friday, the museum will be reopening on Wednesday, June 3rd, so that's next week, Wednesday. We're really excited to welcome people back. We've been closed for, what, almost 2 months now. So it's been a while. We are still gonna be, all three of us are still gonna be taking turns working at the museum and working from home. We do have some special precautions in place, but that information's up on our website. But we look forward to welcoming you back, but don't worry, we actually still intend to keep doing these. We'll be doing them every single week, the entire month of June, and then we're going to switch to twice a month in July. So we actually do have some questions coming in. So Emily, do you want to take the how are the exhibits chosen? Where do you find artists?
Why don't we take that one after the next one, which is, hi, could you share the educational backgrounds you have that gave you the skills for your current positions so they can know who we are and why we have expertise, if we have it. So Melissa, what's your education background? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I will start by saying I am not a fiber artist. I have a deep appreciation for it. My grandma is a trained seamstress, so I grew up playing with her sewing machine, but I am the first one to say I have like zero skill. But I have a background in museums and nonprofits, specifically museums and nonprofit management. So I've worked in museums now scarily for almost 20 years. And this week is actually my 8th anniversary as the director of the museum. So I've been at WMQFA now for 8 years. But I have a master's degree in history and museum studies and a bachelor's degree in anthropology and history. So kind of came by this by way of archaeology and history, and then found my way into the arts too. So that's my background. Devin, Emily?
Devin.
Oh, are we going up in the chain of how we see each other in Zoom here? So my name is Devin McElrath. I'm the education manager, education coordinator, and collections manager, or whatever my title is at any given moment in time, whether I invert them or not. I went to my undergraduate for archaeology at UW Oshkosh, and then master's for anthropology at UW-Madison with a certificate in museum studies, and then I volunteered around in different places in the state and started working at the Wisconsin Museum of Quilts and Fiber Arts 3 years ago in February as their collections manager at 10 hours a week while working at the Milwaukee Public Museum. Wow, it's been a while. The Milwaukee Public Museum and their visitor services staff, where I had an sort of middle management, not management role, but mostly customer facing. So I do dabble in fiber arts. I do cosplay and costuming. I'm currently working on a plague doctor mask because everybody has some sort of weird project they're working on. So that's here. Learning leather working skills is my current thing. It is very rough on your hands. And yeah, and then the education position opened up and I interviewed for it and got it. And so now I am full-time at the Wisconsin Museum of Quilt and Fiber Arts for what, 1.5 years-ish? Almost 2 in June, I think.
2 years now.
So yeah, did I have? Yes. Skills. I dabble in lots of fiber arts, but I'm not good at any specific one. Here are my other quarantine projects because I thought somebody might ask. So I've been needle felting. So I did tiny Totoro and a giraffe. Emily.
Hey. So yeah, let's see. I also am not a quilter or a fiber artist. I was a studio artist in college. I did mostly drawing and installation art. So I went to Smith, I really feel like installation art prepared me for being a curator, honestly, even though that was not my intention at that time. I wanted to go into architecture. So yeah, for most of my 20s, I worked in books. I worked as a researcher on a catalog raisonné, which is basically like a deep dive into one artist's body of work. It was a 3-volume, probably weighs about 40 pounds, kind of one of those like books that are the coffee table, not just the thing that sits on your coffee table. So that was published by Yale in 2011. And I was on a small team who researched that collection. So after that, I went back for my master's in art history. Art history has always been a love since I was a young person. I grew up in New York, so I was really surrounded by a lot of museums. And so I got my master's mostly focused on modern and contemporary American art. But also wrote my master's thesis on a Latin American subject. And then came to Wisconsin for personal reasons and also professional. My husband's from Milwaukee, and I got a job at the Kohler Art Center. I started as an intern and just kind of worked my way up. And yeah, and for the last, now I've been here for year and a half, and I really love it. I love textiles. Kohler is always very focused on craft and women artists, and we did a huge textile show at Kohler, so it's a pretty natural fit. And yeah, I just love the barn gallery. It's such a beautiful space, and that's me.
One of the questions we get, since none of us have those textile backgrounds. Okay, so how did we end up where we are? And how do we end up doing what we do? We are really, really fortunate. Devin actually does have the textile experience. But we are really...
a question on Facebook, so don't mind me being like, here's the thing I made. Yep. Somebody asked to see it.
We are really fortunate that we've got an entire core of really dedicated, really wonderful volunteers who are incredible artists. We have some really incredible artists that sit on our board, the museum's board as well. And I always only half jokingly say, they were really smart when they hired me because they picked me, but really, truly, they made a wise decision. They were looking at the time that I started, which was only about maybe 6-8 months after the museum started, after we opened up our current platform in 2011. The museum had a board full of artists, and they were looking for somebody who actually knew how to run a museum. So they weren't looking for another artist, they were looking for somebody who actually knew how to do the management side of it. And that's what my background had been. And then added Devin, and then now we've added Emily. So what you're seeing here makes up the bulk of the museum staff. In addition to us, we have Ashley, who helps us out on the weekends, every other weekend in the gift shop, and helps to do admissions, and then Krista, who cleans for us. But aside from that, it's volunteers. It's lots and lots and lots of volunteers who do incredible things and tons and tons and tons of work that make everything else that we do all possible. So, nothing that we do would be possible without them. We know that none of the stuff that we do would be possible without them. When we did a volunteer hour count, I think at last count, our volunteers contributed, for the ones that actually are reporting their hours to us, contributed close to the equivalent of 5 full-time staff positions. So we are really, really lucky to have a wonderful dedicated volunteer corps. Even while we've been working from home, we still have volunteers that have actually been helping us with different projects in their homes. So if you saw the Mother's Day cards that were being made, volunteers actually made those for the museum, and we could turn around and sell them. Devon's now starting to recruit some volunteers for the quarantine quilt project, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But
and if you're interested in volunteering, you can always email us at info@wiquiltmuseum.com.
Yep. So, but lots and lots of different projects, and they help keep things going. They also give us ideas. So some of our best ideas, as much as I'd love to say they came from me or they came from, you know, one of the other staff, although some great ideas do, a lot of our best ideas come from the volunteers. It's things that they want to see or things that they want to hear. So since we do have the other question, all right, from there, Emily, it's all you. So how are exhibits chosen? Where do we find the artists for them?
Okay, so so the museum has a curatorial committee that meets biannually, and that's made up of different practitioners, really amazing, incredible artists who specialize in rugs, quilts, and are also scholars. So some of them are Carol Butsky, who I'm sure you guys are familiar with, Joyce Kruger, Victoria Finley Wolf, Jenny Wilder. So they're all advisors to me specifically, mostly, and they, you know, in our meetings, basically, normally I'll come up with some ideas. They'll come up with some ideas, and we'll meet and kind of hash through them and see which ones rise to the top. And sometimes that's based around, you know, a group of artists that we really want to work with, and sometimes it's, you know, thematic. So we're going to be doing a show on hooked rugs. I think Joyce is listening, so she's helping me with that. So, you know, that kind of came about because, you know, we have an incredible rug artist who is so well connected within particularly the Midwest rug community. And she came with a list of artists that I should really look at, and then we collaborated from there. She is an amazing resource. So that's one example. For Remnants, which is another exhibition that's coming up, that was more, you know, kind of thinking about, which we started with water, if you guys saw that show last year, thinking about sort of how fiber art can address timely ecological themes. So climate change and reuse and recycling. And so again, that was, you know, thinking about a theme, but also, you know, looking at what artists are doing right now. And there are a lot of artists who are utilizing scrap materials, fragments, and doing it in really incredible ways. So yeah, my job, I mean, honestly, the very fun part of my job, all of it's fun, but the fun part of my job is identifying artists and working closely with them. I really enjoy that part. And, you know, a lot of artists take the opportunity to make new work. I think, you know, we're at this point where we really want to encourage the museum to be a place of experimentation, at least I do, and, you know, and encourage them to take some risks with their work, you know, in this incredible gallery. So yeah, so that's partly how we curate. And then I just want to plug for Karen Ann Hoffman will be talking to us in 2 weeks' time. I have a wonderful picture of her. I will share my screen because sometimes we do work with, so here you guys can see, that's Karen Ann. So sometimes we do work with consulting curators. This Karen Ann Hoffman is a Iroquois raised beadworker, and she really curated this show, the show Native Fiber, which was a show of contemporary native fiber art throughout the Great Lakes Basin. And so here she is. We got this huge delivery. She brought all the work to the museum, and she was unveiling them. And this is this incredible birch bark piece. So, you know, it's every exhibition is different, and that's what makes it exciting. But you know, our core values really are we curate quilts and fiber arts, and really try to highlight both the historic and contemporary nature of what's happening, what has happened, and what is happening within the media. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
And that's how we also get, you know, some exhibitions that are the more contemporary exhibitions, others like the Infinite Ivory and Blue that's at the museum right now are collections based. So it's featuring, you know, one of the oldest, if not the oldest quilt that we actually have in the museum's collection. So, you know, we really do try to have that, but even Infinite Ivory and Blue, it still represents the range of what the museum has and what we exhibit. So there's lace in it, there's ICATs, quilts, coverlets, even a wedding dress. So a little bit of everything just around that theme of blue and white. So sometimes they're thematic too, you know, it really is where that's the initial inspiration. We have had artists that have actually submitted things to us. So sometimes that's how we find out about an original artist. That's where Greta Mickelson, the Tobacco Silks exhibition came from. Greta actually sent us one of her catalogs, and we loved her things. So we never get we always get some fun ideas. Never know where some of those ideas are going to come from. But that's then what Emily brings to that committee to kind of see and test, I guess, some of what you're looking at with that, isn't it? It's feasibility, whether or not this is actually something, might be a great idea, but will it really work?
When it comes to our collections, I'm the one who gets to say yes or no if it'll work. So one of the things people ask is why our collections manager and curator aren't the same person, because at different institutions, they often are. And a lot of that was Melissa's view on the museum. She wanted to make sure that one person isn't just installing an exhibit by itself, and two, that there's that oversight. So while Emily is thinking thematically about what is going to go up in the exhibit, I'm making sure that my point is always to make sure those pieces are safe and can be displayed properly. So if she says, I want to use this really cool old thing, I go, okay, but it can't hang because it's really fragile, so we have to make sure that it's mounted on a slant, or we have reinforced backing or something along those lines, and then my volunteers help me out with that kind of situation and making stuff. But it's the play between the two of us often that gets things hung. Like that birch bark piece that we saw, that one was very heavy, so we had to anchor it to the wall to make sure that the piece was safe, because our rigging system is predominantly made for quilts, which can be very heavy, but it's a lot different than wood and bark and, you know, framing.
Well, and even that, I think about some of the things like the ICATs and how those are hung in the current exhibition. You know, in a lot of cases, the pieces determine how they're hung, but there is that kind of back and forth as to what's the best way to actually exhibit something. And that best way, you know, there is definitely that back and forth between Devin and Emily with what's going to look the best, what's visually going to be appealing, what's going to work in the context of the exhibition, and then what's safest for the piece, and what's best for the piece. And while we might have a gallery inside a restored old barn, one of the things that's nice is there's no natural light that actually comes into the gallery itself. So we're really fortunate. We don't have to worry about windows or anything like that. But we are still being really careful about light, about lighting levels. You know, every piece is checked in various spots with a light meter. Lighting is adjusted very carefully with staff wearing sunglasses, so we don't. Devin in particular usually doesn't blind herself as we're adjusting the lighting.
Not blinding myself. I've gotten pretty good at not blinding myself.
That's the goal, is not blinding yourself during an installation.
And also being like, oh, that's at a 7.5. We can go up a little hotter on it.
But it's important to us, I mean, whether those pieces are ones that are ones that the museum owns or ones that are being loaned to us, you know, the current exhibit that's up, that's the museum's collections. We care a lot about how those pieces are cared for, but we also care a lot about the pieces that are entrusted to us. You know, we want artists to feel comfortable lending their things. We want collectors to feel comfortable lending their things to us. And so
I mean, it's predominantly our collection. There are 3 that aren't our collection.
But, Devin, you want to talk a little bit about how collections pieces are actually cared for?
Sure.
How we care for them? Looks like you're pulling up some photos, huh?
We'll see. You know who hasn't tried screen sharing before? This girl. Watch everybody else do it, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's screen sharing. Watch me struggle here.
Well, Devin is loading that. One of the things, again, we mentioned we have some really talented volunteers. Our volunteers, the museum has a separate preservation room. And then we have a separate exhibition storage space. And the exhibition storage space is one that our volunteers actually built for us. And the idea is we wanted to be able to keep the 2 spaces separate. So the things that are, it's working, the things that are part of the museum's permanent collection shouldn't be occupying necessarily the same space as exhibit pieces that are coming in when they first come in. Right.
So, goodness, for my first year anniversary working with the institution, Melissa got me compact storage, which was very exciting and a ridiculous amount of work that I had an intern for, Mary Berkey, and she was phenomenal. I love her. She was really, really instrumental in making all of this happen, because at that time I was only working 10 hours a week and she was doing 150-hour internships. So she would come in one extra day when I wasn't there to start organizing the collection. And so that's a picture of the space. Each of the rows hold boxes, and each box has at least 1 quilt, if not multiple quilts, maximum of 2 full quilts. And then each are mostly inventoried. We still are working on a full inventory of the collection. We're down to working on the clothing now. So the quilts and the coverlets are inventoried. And then we're working on some of the other objects. So each are box level inventoried and then down to shelf level inventoried. So if I look in our collections management system, Past Perfect, I can then pull up where to find something in our collections space. So yeah, I got Gracie. Hi, Mom. Sorry. That'll be recorded for infamy. We're watching a dog right now. Hey, this is Mary, being on the graph inventory of the collection. So, and me being very, very excited about the new collection space if it pops up here. So, now do I stop sharing? Recently, we updated it 1 more version where we got.
Should be at the top of your screen, Devin.
What?
Should be at the top of your screen.
Do I change pictures? Can you see the workshop room, or is it just my?
You're still sharing. No, it's the total.
Okay. Sorry, guys. Sorry, everyone. Gendered term of Midwestern. But anyways, we just got 1 more level of storage, and so I got upper cabinetry shelves, which I'm very excited about, but it's pretty messy in the downstairs of the museum. So now that we're opening soon, I really got to get back to work organizing, because Al Prom did a ton of work for me.
Well, and I mean, the whole project, we had shelves before that the volunteers had actually built for us. So before the movable storage, that were just on wheels. So in theory, we could move them around. Practically, it was really hard to do that. So the project that Devin was talking about, that massive thing, everything had to come out. And then in another protected area while all of the shelving and stuff was installed, and then everything had to get moved back in. So it was that was a huge, massive project, but a lot of fun. And when Devin was mentioning the tracking it's not just what box something is in or what shelf something is on. If you were to look in the database and see, look up any of the pieces that are currently on exhibit, they'll actually mention that they're on exhibit. When we pull pieces from the collection and take them to other shows, or we take them to a presentation, like guild presentations and things, it'll actually say, I think Devin usually puts like out with Melissa or something like that, or out at wherever it is. So that at any given moment, we know where the things are. And if they're not on site, we know where they are, and who's the one that's responsible for them. If they're being lent to another museum, it'll say that they've been lent to that museum. And then we also, for our collections, so like the things that are up right now, they won't be exhibited again for at least 2 years. So Devin, you want to talk just a little bit about the collections, the kind of collections policy and how you actually accession, what you do?
How I accession. So I also have a committee, and so people will email me pictures or just information about objects, and then I will usually request more information and photos, and then all of that information is sent off to my collections committee, which is made up right now of 3 people, and they say yes or no. So if 2 say yes, then we take it. If 1 says yes, then it usually doesn't come here. And they base that decision on what we have in our collection, the story of the piece, and the if we already have something in the collection. Did I say that part?
Condition.
The condition. There we go. So those are the 3 main factors that they determine whether or not we want a piece in our collection. It also comes down to how big of the size the collection is and how many pieces it'll take, or how much space it'll take up. Because while we did get compact storage, our storage is limited. So even, you know, it really depends on the story and the context and the piece itself if we're going to accept a piece. Because everything we have needs to have some sort of story to be able to tell in an exhibition. We don't want to just hold pieces and then never show them because we have a better representation of it. Our point isn't to keep pieces hidden, locked away for forever. It's to make sure that we're putting them in an exhibit and sharing them with the world in one way or another. So not only do we use them in exhibits, but I also use them for educational purposes. So Melissa will take them out on talks and lectures. I will bring them out when I'm doing Girl Scout programs. If they have a specific unit where they're learning about dolls, I'll take out our small doll collection, or we're learning weaving or knitting or something, and we'll bring out pieces to show. And I don't remember what you asked me to begin with because I went on a rant there. Accessioning. Oh, and then after that, they each get an individual number based on the year they came in and the number of pieces of collections I've accepted that year. And all objects get their own individual number and photographed and put in our collections database, which is Past Perfect, the 5th edition. Yeah.
So as much as we want, that's why we get offered a lot more than what we actually say yes to. And as much as we'd love to say yes to everything, because we know that, you know, the treasures that are being offered to us really are treasures. In some cases, they're very, very important family pieces, but we just don't have the space, and we want to make sure that we are being really good stewards for whatever does come into the museum. And so the best way to do that is with the accessions committee, which is also, I mean, the way that we do it, you talk to pretty much any museum, any collecting museum, most of them are going to have a very similar process. So this is kind of how we do this, and what we do is very much kind of in line with what the standards are for our industry, for the museum world as a whole. So we try to make sure, I mean, regardless of what we're doing, whether it's exhibits, collections, or education, the museum is a member of the American Alliance of Museums. We try to make sure that we are following those standards as much as possible. Someday we'll actually get the accreditation. It is a very long process. But someday we'll actually do the accreditation. That's one of the goals, long-term goals that we have for the organization. But it's one of those, we want to make sure that what we're doing is the right thing for the piece. And sometimes the right thing for the piece is to say no, as much as we'd like to say yes to everything. So Emily, you want to talk a little bit about how an install actually works, and how we do installations?
Well, we pull out this huge ladder.
It is. It's not really a ladder. It's like a portable staircase.
Yes.
It's what happens when you've got a giant barn. You've got to have a really, really big ladder.
It's true. Yeah, so installations are kind of a whirlwind.
You're being nice.
Yes. They take place over the course of 3 days. So Sunday after the museum closes, we come in and deinstall the show, the current show, and start installing the new show. Monday is normally a very long day for Devin and I. That is really the heart of the installation, where we're really placing all the pieces. And then Tuesday, we're normally really tired, so it kind of tapers off. And then Wednesday is lighting and labels. Normally, typically I'll have a floor plan in mind before we go into all this, so that we can hit the ground running. And we work with a group of very dedicated volunteers who are our exhibit volunteers. They come every single time we ask, and have been doing this for many, many years. So they know all the policies and procedures. They put on their white gloves immediately. They're just really wonderful, and they really help with everything. They help with cutting slats. They help with putting the work around the room and making sure that they're on sheets so that we don't get anything dirty. And
there's a lot of sheets during the
installation. And yeah, so that's a big part of the process. If you're interested in becoming an exhibit volunteer, you can email me. And sometimes they help with cutting labels. I have a volunteer who helps me proof the labels. So we really rely on them, and they're very generous with their time and expertise. And then, in terms of like general installation ideas, I'm always looking at things, looking at how we can maybe install things differently. I take a lot of pictures at other museums. I thought I would share some with you that are particularly wonderful.
If I could interject one thing, it's dangerous to go to, if any of you have friends and that work at museums, it's dangerous to go to other museums with your friends that work at museums. It drives my sister batty when we go, because I'm looking at how something is hung or what label, like how they did the label, and she's like, you're supposed to look at what it is.
Yeah, you don't experience museums the same way when you work, when you go to school for them.
You really don't.
It becomes an entirely different endeavor.
Yep.
I still enjoy them.
Yes.
But I don't enjoy them the same as I used to. You don't just go for the pure enjoyment of a museum anymore. You're always thinking critically about how something got there, how it's hung, how it's displayed, how you could do something similar in your institution.
Like how could we do this? How can we adapt this for ourselves?
Yes. So on that note, if we ever do a hat show, this is the way. This is an awesome display of hats. This was at the Brooklyn Museum. It was the Pierre Cardin show. And oh my gosh, I love it. So, I, again, just constantly thinking about how someone else is doing it. What they're doing right, maybe what I would change, but also just taking lots and lots of pictures. This one was at MoMA in their textile galleries, and I also really love this display. Actually, this is kind of what influenced the current display of iCots, if you've been to the museum.
And the picture didn't change.
Oh, it didn't? I'm sorry. How do I do this?
Yay, see, we're making other people do it, and then we're never the ones that have to do it. I showed some more pictures, but you know what?
Okay, here we go. I'm going to try this way.
There we
Hey,
go. Now it works.
Looks like an IKEA.
Yeah, so this is the textile galleries at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And if you've been to see our current blue and white show, you'll know that I hung the icots in such a way that you kind of have this sense of dimension. And really, honestly, that was influenced by what's happening here. I really love what they did with this installation, and I love the integration of furniture and textiles, because I really feel like, you know, there's just such a crossover. And yeah, it's just a really beautiful installation. And yeah, so that's you know, that's part of what I'm thinking about. I guess I can show you one more. I will have to stop share and do all this weird thing.
The fun with computers and doing this virtually and live.
I apologize. I should have put it all in a PowerPoint. And then this again is at the Brooklyn Museum, and this is two works by Sam Gillam. I think he's alive still, but yeah, and he does these incredible fabric paintings, and I just really love the way they thought about how the two works were relating to each other. And this was like sculpture and a flat piece, you know, so it was just a wall work. So it's just a really beautiful picture, I think. So, so again, just thinking about, oh yeah, and then they taped off the floor. And I've thought about how we can do that sometimes too, if we need to, you know, if we change the feeling of the barn and change where we're putting things, do we need to tape something off? And I'm always looking at like how museums do that, because I think that can be tricky to figure out an elegant solution for that. So so yeah, so that's part of what goes into installations.
Oh, and then there's also, when I mentioned there's a separate storage facility or storage area for exhibit pieces versus our collections pieces. Everything that comes into the museum for any of the art that's on loan to us, and actually even for before it goes on exhibition, the art even that the museum owns, is condition reported. So you're looking, and again, it's Devin and volunteers that are usually doing that, looking at everything about it so that we know exactly what condition it came into the museum. We can document, you know, God forbid there's any damage, or if there's something that we already know about that the artist already told us, we can document it. And then when it comes down, it's condition reported again before it's either put back or before it's returned to the artists. And the art comes to us in all sorts of different ways. You know, mentioned Karen Ann dropping stuff off and dropping a whole bunch of things. I think she dropped off the majority of the things for native fiber, correct?
Yeah, we got some mailed in, but mostly she took a couple of trips and brought us things. Emily and I, for the water exhibition, went on a trek to Chicago, renting a van twice to get pieces to us and back from Frank Conant. That was a lot of fun. It was a very tiring trip, but it was fun.
And then other times stuff is mailed to us in all sorts of different interesting containers. So it's also, the pieces are also photographs. So as we unpack it, we know exactly how it was packed. So we know how to pack it up again. So it's returned to the artist how they
you make a mistake once and you then document insanely the next time.
So lots and lots of pictures. So there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, it's not just, all right, we've got the art, we can put it up. You know, Emily, you mentioned the floor plan, but that gives us a basic idea. Once you see the art in the pieces, there's also a lot of change because you don't know how the pieces, you think, we've seen photos of them, but you don't necessarily know how they're truly going to look until they're in the space.
Yeah, one thing I have a hard time with is dimensions. Like I can't in my brain imagine what a particular dimension looks like until I see it. And then it's like, oh yeah, that's a lot smaller. Oh, that's a lot bigger. And, you know, and that definitely changes things. So.
And I've worked with, what, 3 different curators now, Emily being the 3rd one. And everybody installs exhibits differently. So Emily has a vision going in, and she knows exactly where she wants things. And then at some point she second guesses herself when we change it up. And then hours or maybe the next day later, she comes back and she's like, I was right the first time. And I'm like, we got to stick with your gut. It's always been right. But other people will come in and have a sort of idea, or will lay it out, you know, by floor, or it really depends on the curator. Emily is very visual, so she knows what piece is going to go where, and then sometimes she'll put it up and we'll take it down and then we'll put it up again, but it almost always ends up where she originally thought it was going to be, because she's got a really good vision on what the space looks like and what it can accomplish.
And it's some of that too. Some of that too is also, it might be, this is the right spot for it. And in relation to that, because it's one of the things that I love about just seeing how Emily is actually working. So we get these almost little vignettes. And it's something that's a real challenge with the space. We have a gorgeous space, an absolutely beautiful space, but it's a big open barn, and so it can feel it's tricky, I think, to try to strike that balance between having it be the right spot for something and not having the space completely overwhelm the art, especially with certain pieces that might be either more muted in color or smaller pieces. And I think Emily does a really wonderful job, you know, to Devin's point, being very visual and being able to create these really wonderful little vignettes or little rooms within this bigger space that still takes advantage. I mean, you still know that you're in this bigger space, so you don't lose the beauty of the barn, but you see the art. You really do see the art, and that's a definite skill and a real challenge, I think, each time.
Well, thanks, guys.
You can also tell that the 3 of us do enjoy working together. So it makes a big difference, especially with now working from home and stuff like that. It's been a challenge, but it's also been it's fun, and it's fun working with people that you actually enjoy being around, and getting ideas from one another.
Speaking of fun things, we've been asked, what's the most fun thing about each of your jobs?
Oh, I have to say, for me, probably the people, which is a good thing. A lot of what I do is interacting with the volunteers, interacting with our donors, with our members. I'm liaison with a lot of different groups with for the museum. So working with like Visit Milwaukee or our tourism partners and the Department of Tourism at the state. So it's a good thing that I actually like people. But it's fun. I mean, you never know the stories that people are going to be telling. And it's one of those, if you're ever having a difficult day or a hard day, the best thing to do, go up in the gallery and just see people enjoying everything at the museum, or pop your head into one of the classes and see people working so diligently at something. And just wanted to share one quick story. You know, seeing the power of the kind of connection with art and people. One of my favorite experiences at the museum happened in the water exhibition. We had a piece by an artist named Vicki Reed that had photos, and I'm not sure, Emily, you'd have to remind me exactly how she got the photos on there. I don't know if they were screen printed onto the silk. The grandmother's piece.
Yeah.
So there were all these photos of grandmothers that she'd taken from around the world. And I happened to be up in the gallery. I don't remember, I think it was meeting. I just finished up a meeting with a donor. And this gentleman walked in and kind of asked me, he's like, do you work at the museum? He had seen me talking to somebody. I said, yes, you know, can I help you with something? And he's like, that's my grandma. This is a gentleman from who lives in Boston now. He's originally from Ghana, and his grandmother is Ghana. That's where Vicki actually, I believe that's where Vicki actually took the picture. He's like, that's my grandma. That's my grandma. So, you know, it's that sort of thing. You never know the sorts of connections that people are going to make. You never know the people that you're going to meet. And some of the fun things that, you know, you're going to hear, the stories that you're going to hear, and the stories that people are going to share. So for me, it's the people, and that includes the 2 others that are on this call, or in this webinar. So I thoroughly enjoy working with both Devin and Emily, and as a director, I feel incredibly grateful to have both of them. The last 2 months would have been unbearable without these 2. So, and we wouldn't have been able to do as much as we've done without them. So, you know, we're really lucky. We've got a really good team in place, and I love our volunteers. So, all right, you guys, what's your favorite thing?
Well, I've got like 14 different jobs, so if I were to pick one thing that I liked about each one, I'd be on here for a whole hour by myself. But if we kind of regiment it to, like, you know, collections, my brain works like a puzzle, so I like to put things in the right places and organize things strategically. Like, the part of collections that I like is organizing, cataloging, putting them away. So that part of that job. Versus the education aspect, I love working with students. So we worked with, I don't know, what was that school?
High school.
Oh, I know if we're talking about
the Milwaukee High School. No,
was it Milwaukee High School of the Arts, or? Oh,
I can't remember. Anyways, they came in, and the students were teenagers. They were working, their whole semester was about fiber art, and working in, like, this one class was working with fiber art and working and learning how to quilt and learning how to sew and learning how to create art in that way. And they ended up with this collaborative art project. So they came in and we taught them how to paint on fabric and then stitch around it. But while they were up in the gallery, their teacher was talking to them and talking about how each individual views art. And she said, there are 2 different ways that you can view art. You can view it as a lens of the artist itself, what the artist is trying to say, or you can view it from yourself, like a window. So you're seeing everything in art and how it impacts you. So does this one piece speak to you in a specific way, and does it remind you of something in your life? Are you viewing it through that window, or are you viewing it as an artist? And it was just listening to those kids talk about art impacted them and how they thought the artist, you know, reading about what then the artist said about that piece and if it changed their view on the art was really inspiring. And working with kids is really cool. And I mean, our teachers are also very incredible, and they all bring different perspectives. I've learned so many things from them too. So I do a lot of cool things, but teaching wise, those students, and then I get to teach tie-dye once a summer, and that's just really fun. And last year, Tink asked me to teach it for adults too, so it's now an adult also thing, and you're just playing with dye in the middle of summer, making t-shirts, and it's really fun. So.
And Devin added squirt guns to.
Oh yeah. So when I was younger, my dad always made things extra fun by just doing something silly. So like when I played softball in college or high school, and he was our coach, he bought a bunch of fruit, and we would, at the end of the season, we would like hit fruit with the softball bats and then, you know, clean up afterwards. So it's just always adding that extra level of weird fun. So I went out and bought squirt guns, which we still use for the class, and we just hang about a yard of fabric, and then you can shoot it with squirt guns and you get a tapestry. So, you know, my parents are very artistic people. So like I've always been surrounded by art, which is how I ended up in the art world. I thought I'd do archaeology, but I worked on ceramics, and ceramics just led to textiles, and now I'm here. But so finding fun things to do with art. Emily, your turn.
You guys are so
before I rattle.
What's my most oh my gosh, well, definitely working with the artists. That's definitely the most fun. Again, a people thing. It's really, I love being surprised by artists. I feel like they, you know, I'll contact them 3 months to 6 months out and, you know, say, hey, this is the theme and this is kind of what we're thinking. And, you know, I was really drawn to this in your body of work. And then, you know, 3 months later, they come back and they said, yeah, okay, great. I created this whole new thing for you. And that's, I love that surprise, and I love their dedication and their, how they really, take the time and take the opportunity and kind of run with it. And that's really gratifying as a curator. And we've really worked with a lot of incredible artists, some really nice local artists, regional artists, as well as national artists. And each one of them is just incredibly special. I kind of, they all become your friends, right? Like, they're just really wonderful people. And you enjoy working with each, and I enjoy working with each and every one of them. I particularly enjoy when they come in to install and you get to kind of see the work in the space for the first time. I think that's a really special moment. And yeah, Vicki Reed was one that created a new work for the water exhibition, and seeing this long draping piece come to life in the space was really, really cool. So that part, the part when like everything jives and you're installing and all your work is about to come to fruition, that part is really gratifying and fun for me. So.
Right. On that gratifying and fun, you've got, what's your favorite piece of art the museum has exhibited? You gotta be exclusive.
That's a hard question.
Yeah, that's a hard question.
That's a really hard question.
Well, you guys get awful. During the native fiber exhibit, my favorite piece was the strawberry that was hanging, because it was so hard to figure out how to hang. And when it was accomplished, it just hung in the middle of those rafters, and we used fishing line, and trying to figure out how to hang it was wonderful, and it looks stunning in that space, and I really, really enjoyed how it ended up. So that I don't remember her name, but she's a local artist, and
Strawberry.
Yeah, it was this hanging strawberry, and the strawberry itself had a really wonderful story. It was about the history of storytelling, so and your personal history, so you're always keeping in mind multiple generations before you, and then the things that you're doing now will impact multiple generations after you. And it was the story of that piece itself was really beautiful.
I don't know if I can actually pick a favorite. I've got different ones for different reasons and different stories. So, I loved Vicky's piece in that, but that was because of that gentleman. The story of that just touched me, in such an amazing way. So, but I'd say different exhibits, but it's different things for different reasons. But a lot of the reasons that some of the things are my favorites are the stories behind it. So, with what's up right now, one of my favorite pieces in the museum's collection is actually on exhibit right now, and that's the wedding dress. And the reason it's one of my favorites is because of the story behind it. It's a parachute dress. It was made, the maker's husband brought it home. It was a German parachute that was liberated. And he brought it home. Yeah, he brought it home with him from World War II. And silk was in high demand. I mean, it was hard to get. It was being used for the war effort. It was being used for parachutes. And so he brought this parachute home to her. She made her wedding dress out of it. So we even have the parachute itself. We've got the rest of the parachute. You can see exactly where she cut the silk out of the parachute. And then, but even the trim on that dress, it's the cording. It's the paracord from the parachute that you can actually see. So it's really just, it's an amazing story. And then they got married in that, with her wearing that dress. But part of that's only part of the story. The other part of it is that wedding dress was Marion Wolf's, and Marion Wolf was one of the museum's founding mothers. She's one of the people that helped to get the museum started. And so it's not just that it's got an amazing story behind it. There's an amazing story that really relates to who we are, who the museum is, to the organization itself. So, but you're kind of, that question is a bit like asking you to pick like a favorite child, I think.
There, that's the piece Melissa's talking about.
Yes, that is the piece that I am talking about. That's the parachute dress.
That one was fun for me too because I had to make something so that it didn't touch the ground.
Yeah, it looks like it's on the ground, but it's not. Emily, any idea?
Oh gosh, each show has, yeah, it's hard to choose.
Is it your iCats?
I like those. Those are beautiful. I guess there was again native fiber, which was a show last year in the winter of last year, and there was a quilt by Carla Hemlock, who's a very well-known Native American quilter, and she quilted this image of a man getting tattooed, and that was about how Indigenous communities are kind of reviving the tattoo as a way to heal and to connect with their ancestors. And so that was I thought that was a really incredible special piece. And it really, whenever I'm thinking about the power of quilting, I think about that piece. So again, that was one that she created for us specifically, and yeah, oh man, that show was amazing. But all these shows are amazing. And
I just brought up pictures of that show to see if I could find the piece you were talking about, and I was like, oh, and the dolls, those dolls were so beautiful. If I had to say I had a favorite exhibit, it would be that one. And I really hope that we can do something similar, like around, as the artists, many of them made specific pieces for Karen Ann for this exhibit, and they were demonstrating their personal expertise, and some of them had never worked in fiber before, and it was wonderful. And Karen Ann.
Some of it, I mean, some of the things you have, every exhibition is special, but it touches people in different ways. Every single one of them touches people in different ways. That one in particular, the native fiber exhibit, it wasn't just, it was both the artists and the people watching, or the people who viewed it. And it's the comments and things like that we got from both the artists were things like, I never thought that a museum would care what I'm making. I mean, we got some of those sorts of comments. We got comments from visitors just saying they didn't realize how wonderful some of these cultures were. So, I mean, it was an amazing collaborative project, giving these artists that opportunity and kind of acting. The museum basically acted as the bridge between, different audiences. So there's, some really amazing opportunities that we have with some of the different exhibitions that we've done. One of my favorite exhibitions was actually the Traditions one, the Mary McElwain. And part of that is, again, it's the story behind it. It's this little quilter or this little quilt shop in Walworth County that, kind of just made incredible impact in the early 20th century. And it was the first time that many of her things had actually been all together. It was the first exhibition that anybody had ever done like that. So also personally, it was one of the first ones that opened up shortly after I started. So it's one that'll always be near and dear to my heart just because I was brand new at the museum too. So, all right, well, we've only got a couple of minutes left. So any final thoughts? Devin, you want to do a quick quarantine quilt update?
Oh,
people know about that really cool project.
Yeah, our quarantine project. So I brought a couple. So I'm working along with Kate Schrader right now, working on documenting and then start organizing them to put them into the quilts, which if you would like to submit your pieces, check out our website. Please put them in the mail by June 30th. But I grabbed a couple of the pieces from the ones that I'm working on at home. So that one.
How many pieces are we up to now?
282.
And
one rug, which is amazing. And I only have pictures of it, but I didn't get them off the phone, so I could show you it on the phone, but that seems really silly. So
you can look,
stay tuned. I will post them a little later.
I was gonna say they'll be up on our website.
Yeah.
So
and then we've gotten some really unique pieces recently of not like this one is completely fiber, but it's all fiber that's been hand dyed by the artists. But we've been getting some painted on pieces. They're like, I'm not a quilter by trade, but I wanted to make a piece of art for your exhibition. So that one, and then this one has become my favorite just because it's kind of an anime style and I think it's really cute. So. But it's also embroidered around the edges. So, but yeah, we've gotten some really amazing pieces. These are just some from the ones that I have at home to work on. But
some of the stuff that's been fun, I mean, I think that project, we all loved the idea. Devin pitched it at the end of a, like one of our first virtual staff meetings. We do these 3 times a week. And it really was like it was a final thoughts, any other ideas. We were just, this was just as all this was getting started. And Devin threw this idea out. And I think it was another like 20, 30 minutes later conversation as we figured out how are we going to do this. And then that kind of became the bulk of, I think, Devin's life for the first like 2 weeks. Because
I made myself a whole new job.
It just
welcome to marketing and media.
Yeah, it went crazy online. But we realized we tapped something. We really tapped into something. And so the pieces have been coming from all over the country. I mean, I don't know how many states at this point. At last count, we were over like 25 or 30 states already. We're now getting pieces from other countries that have arrived. So, I mean, we're truly getting things from all over the place. We've gotten questions from people asking, I live in such and such, can I still make one? And absolutely, we want them. And then the rug, you know, we have some non-quilters. So we had hooked rug hookers that actually decided they made an entire hooked rug for us. Their own blocks, so they followed what we asked, and then they made a rug out of it. So
it's amazing. I can't wait for you all to see it.
It's just amazing what's come in, and some of them have been like we'll get a couple of blocks where a family did them together. So you've got, you know, mom and dad might have made a block, but the kids made blocks too. So where they did this as a family art project. So it's just been a lot of fun to see what's come in. If you're curious about it, check out the museum's website, the wiquiltmuseum.com /quarantine quilts, or look at our Facebook page because there's an album of all of the different blocks. Devin's been wonderful about posting all of the blocks for the quarantine quilts.
As long as my internet holds.
But you know, we have had fun doing these programs as well. So, oh, that's the rug.
Yeah, the hooked rug. Also, my second favorite part is that she was like, is there enough information about each of the artists? And on the back, there's this huge panel, and it's more information than I've gotten from so many of the quilts. And it's like, it's beautiful, and it's lovely, and it's over the top perfect, and I'm just so happy.
So again, if you're thinking about making a block, we don't have to have them by June 30th, but they do have to be postmarked by June 30th. So we thank you for tuning in today. Next week will be a tour. Emily's going to be doing a virtual tour of the Infinite Ivory and Blue exhibition. June 12th will be Karen Ann Hoffman, so the bead worker that we were talking about a little bit earlier. And then on the 19th, we're going to be doing, if you liked last week's panel, you'll really love the panel on the 19th. And then on the 26th, we're collaborating with the Helen Louise Allen Textile Center at UW-Madison. So stay tuned. And let us know any final closing thoughts, Devin, Emily?
I'm answering Facebook questions.
Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you. And again, you know, the museum is offering these for free, so donations are appreciated. You can actually realize I didn't post that in the thing. Donations are appreciated. It helps to keep things, helps us to keep things going, helps us to continue offering these for free. So your support.
If you have ideas for more,
Yes.
let us know.
Yeah, because we want to continue doing these. Like I said, I mean, we intend to continue doing these into the future and into next year. So we need ideas. So if you've got ideas and suggestions, shoot us an email. I'm posting the email address on the museum's website. And thank you very much.